All right, so welcome back to episode 3 of the Kick Back with Jack podcast. Today I am joined by number 10 ranked middleweight boxer, promoter, gym owner, and just all round great bloke, Sam Dwyer. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Jackie boy. I will correct, number 10 ranked super middle. I'm
Super middleweight, excuse
super
me.
middleweight.
Oh, I was going to say you're looking pretty slim at the moment, but
No, I'm heavier than I've been. I think my next fight's a light heavy until I get back down to super middle, but we'll see.
yeah, right. So I guess first off, for the people that don't know you, talk to me a little bit about your journey in boxing and, how you came to be where you are now.
Yeah, I mean, mine's a weird journey. Like, I didn't start boxing until I was 18 until when I finished high school, and then I moved up to Warrnambool for university and had my first fight first few fights over in Warrnambool, and then moved back to Mount Gambier, which was a regional town in South Australia. There wasn't a lot there. I started up my own gym just for someone to train, and I didn't know a heap at that point. It was just me and a small group of guys training together. And then, through that, it grew. I had a bunch more fights. I got better at coaching. And then, the gym's grown into a little bit of a powerhouse. And, from there, we sort of, started doing amateur promotions. And now we're in the pro leagues. And then I went pro. And, anyway, it's been a very, it's been a journey of about 10 years, a decade of, if somebody had to do it, why not me? So, I mean, I suppose the key thing is I live in a rural, it's not necessarily rural, like Mount Gambier is 30,000 people, so it is a city, but like the infrastructure there, particularly with boxing, was non-existent. There was a few smaller gyms there, but nothing that I could get to with my work hours, nothing that nowhere that I felt, suited me training wise. So I set up my own thing. So I've had a little bit of a unique journey, and that everything I've done in the sport has been as a result of, me having to create the infrastructure for me to do it. So that's why my resume looks a little bit odd in terms of we've got to obviously have to set up my own if I want to fight and do it properly, I had to set up my own promotions and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, I'm rambling, but that's
No, that's good.
I don't know, how do you be concise about 10 years?
10 years, yeah. And for the people that don't know, how far is it from Mount Gambier to Warrnambool? Like, how far were you travelling to have to train when you first started?
You want to move back, so 200 k's, so each way, so like 2 hour round trip. But I mean, where we are is 500 k's from Melbourne and 500 k's from Adelaide, or 450 roughly, but about a 5 hour trip. So when we go sparring on the weekends, it's sort of up in the morning. As you would know, Jack, because you train with us, it's sometimes it's a 10-hour round trip to go get some rounds in the morning.
Yeah, for sure. And talk to me a little bit about the journey of, starting your own gym. You said you started it almost out of necessity, but how's that sort of developed? And you guys, you're a powerhouse now. You're out there beating city gyms on the regular basis. Like, talk to me about that journey.
Yeah, honestly, it's very much a one foot in front of the other kind of journey. Like, if you think about where we are now, it was almost never the intention. It's just been sort of one incremental step after one incremental step. I just rented a vacant shed with, 5 sets of gloves, a $20 bunning rack, and honestly, it was rapey as fuck. I don't know who. Literally just had like one of those Kmart canvases with the words on Permo boxing ring with an arrow that I put out on the road when we started. Like, I don't know who would ever come train with us when we started, but
was that next to the van with free candy written on the side?
No, that came later. But honestly, like that's where we started, and it's just been an incremental. Like, we started with, because we're in like a row of sheds. We started with one shed, and then I remember when we first got floor mats, and then my brother came down and built me a boxing ring, like a floor ring, and was so excited to have floor mats, and we were so excited to. Well, it wasn't even enough to cover the whole gym. We had like 100 square meters, and then then the next thing was we got floor mats and the whole thing, and then we got bag racks. We used to hang the bags off an old soccer goal, and it was I bought an old soccer goal to hang the bag racks off because we couldn't afford to actually like do it properly. And then we're 8 years down the track, and we've just built a new gym with 400 square meters. We've got 2 boxing rings, we've got oodles of bags, everything's got floor mats on it now. Like, it's just I don't know. Things just happen incrementally, and so where we're in a row of sheds, and we just got to knock down the wall and go next shed, knock down the wall and get the next shed, and I don't know. It's just been a natural progression.
And what do you attribute that success to? Like, obviously, like starting super rags. Like, how did you sort of develop it? Like, was there times where you were worried, like, oh god, I don't know if this is going to work out?
Well, I mean, I've always worked, right? So, like, I've got a weird resume, but I'm also an accountant, right? So, I've never worried about the gym because me and my wife have been together since we were 15, right? So we've always had two incomes. We moved back to Mount Gambier, luckily just before housing prices there went crazy. We bought our first house when we were young. So like and we don't have any kids, so like the gym's been my baby. So in terms of like financial stress, no, not until we went into the pro promotion stuff was I ever really seriously concerned. But it just was very much like a very incremental thing. We started, obviously we lost money on the gym, and then I worked hard and got to put a little bit more money into the gym, and then it got to a point where it just sort of sustained itself. And what gyms aren't, particularly boxing gyms, are not money spinners. Like the gym very much just sits there to fund itself. But it's sort of at a point now where it's big enough that it just sort of it continues to fund its own growth, which is amazing. And I don't work full time now as an accountant, but I still do because that's the money we live off. And yeah, we're just very fortunate. We live in an area where it's not the highest cost of living, and rent's cheap. And maybe if you take risks, it's a little bit less risky than doing something like that in a capital city.
Mm-hmm. And as someone who's an active fighter and is also an active coach and is now in promotion, how are you balancing it all?
Yeah, honestly, it's fucking hard. Like, it's really fucking hard. I mean, my wife might have a bit more to say about it than me, but I mean, like, I just think about last year, like, we did our first pro promotion, which was an international show in Cambodia. We had to build all the pathworks and legal frameworks to even do that. We did our first pro show in Mount Gambier. We obviously had, I was involved with the Gather Round boxing show in Adelaide. I still was working. We built a new gym. I finished studying my CPA. Like, it was just a crazy year. We went to 4 different countries, or fought in a few different countries. Like, it was just a crazy, crazy year. And I don't know, like, it's just one foot in front of the other. Like, I don't really ever think about it. But, granted, when my mate messaged me and asked me to catch up for a beer, and I look at my calendar and be like, I'll see you in 3 weeks. Sometimes like that, it's, you sort of realize how busy you get. But I don't know, it's just, I love what I do. One foot in front of the other. It is what it is. I don't really know. Honestly, like, to me, like, I don't think about how I do so much. Sometimes I just look at people who go to work and then come home and do fuck all, and that to me is way worse than working from 5 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, it is strange. And you touched on the promotional stuff there. So talk to me about how the last card went. What was that all about? Hosting your first pro card.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. It was fucking phenomenal. Like, so if we talk about like the first pro card, obviously like Cambodia ones are like a very complex sort of story. But if we talk about like the Australian side, so we did the particularly in South Australia, there was like no pro shows in South Australia for like, I want to say like 10 years into like the last 18 months, and there's a few of us promoters now that are sort of taking the ball by the horns, and it's for a bunch of various reasons, but it's been really hard, and not just for me, but like, for Golden Glove and Top Team, the other guys that have come into like South Australia, because it's sort of hard. Like, you don't even have any pros, you don't have any big stars, you don't have anything. So we're building it from the ground up. And I think like our value proposition as a promotion, particularly been regionally, is that we can get those guys early and we can build them up. And then, once we can build them up, they can go off to those bigger ones. But we've still got to create those stars as well. So, it's kind of, I thought it was really funny. Like, everyone, when you look at sponsorships or go to the council and they want you to a budget. And you're like, I don't know how many tickets we're going to sell. I might lose 50 grand in a night. I'm not really sure. Like, and particularly regulatory wise, and like Australia at the minute, and particularly me being an accountant, is very anti-small business. The regulatory and loopholes you've got to jump through, the costs, everything is just absolutely fucking horrendous. So to do a small boxing show, like, and I'm an accountant, so like I always feel comfortable talking about the figures, but just do like a small show cost us 75 grand in Mount Gambier, right? So that's my money that comes out of, obviously there's some sponsors you chip money in, but at the end of the day, like the bulk of that is coming out of the redraw on my mortgage. Went really well. Like the town showed up en masse, but it's just so expensive, really, really hard to cover your costs. So I think we lost about 7 grand on the first one, which is cool. Like that's within budget. We sort of, we had a decent year at the gym. We had a bit of cash to play with, so we were more than willing to do that. We we made a few mistakes on the first one, a few expenses we probably didn't need. Maybe the finances, a couple of the fights we set up didn't make sense in hindsight. But you just, first one. With this time around, I think we're doing it better. It's a lot easier to get matches. It's not so hard to we're not paying people stupid money to come down, travel 500 k's from capital cities to train. So, to fight. So, I don't know. I think first one went amazingly well, enough for me to be stupid enough to do it again. But depends on what your metrics are. Like I thought it was a phenomenal night. Everyone in town had an amazing night, and the fighters thought it was one of the best cars they fought on. So, we're very proud of the effort we put in.
And what gives you the confidence to be like, you know what, I'm just going to get all this money, I'm going to put it towards something that, you believe in, and, if it fails, it fails, but, what gives you that confidence?
Well, it's not confidence, you're just shitting yourself, like, you literally just... You literally you sit there being like, nobody's going to come, this is going to be a flop. Like I don't think it's confidence. I just think fortune favors the bold sometimes. Like I've always had like a thought that I'd rather regret something that I did rather than something I didn't do. Like say I got to the end of my life and I was sitting in the accounting firm and I had a really safe career and everything went well and I paid my mortgage off. I don't know, that to me, there's some fates worse than death sometimes, and for me to not take some of those risks and do something, I know that scares me more than doing something and losing 20 grand in a night. Like I can recover from 20 grand, I can't recover from a life of doing something mediocre. And not saying and that's what I consider mediocre. Like, people, I don't want people to take that wrong. Like it's just, I have a passion and I feel very drawn to doing this sort of stuff. And for me not to do this thing that I'm drawn to in lieu of something that I perceive as safer is, that's what scares me. Man, whether somebody has something, if someone's crazy passionate about their job and they love it and they move up through the corporate ranks, and that's phenomenal if that's something you're passionate about. For me, that's not something I've been passionate about. It's sort of trying to forge my own direction and do something. So it's definitely not confidence, it's just stupidity. And I don't know, I think the big thing is it's one foot in front of the other. Like you see something like a pro show and there's so many moving parts, visas and you got to find the fighters, and a lot of them come from international, and you go, how do we get them registered? What state are they going to register in? And then you got to work out that then you got to get them medicals, and then we worked out SA wasn't really set up for international fighters, so we had to find all these loopholes to get them in and get them ticked off and all this sort of stuff. Like if I knew that at the start, I would never have done it, but you just kind of commit to something and then you work out all the intricacies and you're like, Jesus Christ, that was a lot harder than I thought. So I don't know, one foot in front of the other.
And do you think that sort of trait that you have as a person ties in with you also being a boxer? Because that ability to be like, I'm just going to go for it, it seems like it translates in the ring.
Oh, 100%. Dude, I was a little bitch in high school. I was the kid with a big gap in my teeth and a lisp, and I learned to fight because I got sick of being bullied, and I got beat up one day and I got sick of it when it took me to 18 years old. And would have been voted least likely to ever been in a fight in high school. And then, it's sort of, I think doing hard things makes doing hard things easier, right? So the more hard things you do, the easier doing hard things are. So, I think 100%. I notice it in I never necessarily been good in, confrontational situations, which sounds stupid for what I do for a job now, but I've never been that good in negotiations. I've always been very placid and very, very people pleasing, and you get better at that as you go along, whether it's the boxing, whether that gave me confidence somewhere else to put myself in a situation to do something more of this sort of stuff. And I don't really know what the nexus of it is, but you do hard shit, you get better at doing hard shit. You're in more fights, you better in physical confrontations, you're better in tense situations, you're better in business situations. Maybe you get more pro risk. I don't know. Who knows, man.
So would you recommend doing a combat sport to anyone?
Yeah, I don't look. Obviously, like,
Yeah.
I mean, it's very self-serving for me to recommend.
Yeah, you wouldn't be much of a promoter if you said no, would you? Or a gym owner?
What's Chuck Palahniuk say in a Fight Club? Once you go to Fight Club, the volume of life gets turned down, which I believe in. Like, you know, I think we have a massive masculinity crisis. I think I think young men need an outlet for masculinity. It doesn't need to be combat sports, but people need to do hard things. I think there is something intrinsic, particularly in men fighting, but obviously, like, the biggest growth we've seen in the gym is women as well. So there's something deep down and there's something primal that we tap into when we fight. And, I've very rarely seen a bad outcome from someone stepping into a fight gym. Now, granted, do I think people should have as many fights as I've had? Do I think they should take their career to the nth degree as me? And I think in a lot of cases the answer is no for that. Obviously, we pay a big price cognitively for what we do as a job or as a passion. But, for some people there aren't other options, right? There's some kids who fighting keeps them out of prison. There's some kids for fighting who keeps them off of drugs. There's some... or I'm an accountant with a university degree that has a good lucrative career that I decide to do this instead. But, like, for me, not doing it is a worse outcome than doing it. And, boxing has led me to this big career path that's, promotion and gym owning and all that sort of stuff. So, even if to some degree I lose a percentage of cognitive function at some future date, I've spent most of my 20s, 30s, and hopefully 40s, 50s, and 60s doing everything I love every day. So, I mean, it's a very complex situation. I think to some degree everybody should learn how to fight. I think everybody should know how to handle themselves, and I think the outcomes for young people, especially young men, is better if they have an outlet and they have the confidence and the respect for violence that we have. But do I think that a fight career is for everyone? I don't.
Yeah. And do you think in terms of this masculinity thing, people just lack resilience? Like, do you think that's what it ultimately boils down to these days?
Oh, fucking oath. Yeah. I think it's just the lack of doing hard shit. Like, we look at it and you see, the way that our social structures are, everything socially, everything education, parenting, there's no accountability for the kids. There's not hard things. Like, I think about the way I grew up. At maybe a rougher upbringing than some, and it gives you some sort of resilience, but I had strong adults and strong role models around me that would, pull me into line, and I think there's something for boundaries and respect and all these sort of things. So I think I don't know, it's lack of resilience, but it's just dude, our society's fucked in the way that we raise kids, the way we educate them, the way we do everything. And, you can say it's one thing or the other. I think it's a very, very complex situation. But by any metric you look at, people are not happy. People are killing themselves in fucking record numbers. So, lay it down to whatever you want. But from my little subsection, there is an absolute lack of resilience. I think my generation and younger are just absolutely, genuinely fucking piss weak. They have no work ethic, they have no resilience, they have no desire to actually get out there and do the grind. And, I don't know what that comes from. That's not really my business, but they're definitely a weak generation.
So, if someone was to get involved in boxing per se, does everyone need to fight to develop that resilience and to develop those sort of attitude changes, or can you just come along and train and that's enough?
Depends on the person, depends on the challenges, depends on the upbringing. For some people, just going to a gym and doing something physical is enough, right? And it depends on what you're doing, it depends on what outcomes you want, and it depends on what your starting point is. I don't know. There are some people, some people break up with their missus, or some people are alcoholics and they go to the gym and that makes them feel better and they get stronger and all they do is lift weights. They don't have to fight. It's about finding what works for you particularly. Now, obviously, the harder things you do, the better you get at doing hard things. So the more we step hard things up, the more you get better at doing hard things or things you don't want to do. And, for some people that might be fighting. For some people that just literally might be getting up and going to the gym on time. It's not a... I think that we have a really big problem with this one-size-fits-all mentality. You listen to podcasts, you listen to fucking... And I love these guys, like, Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan or Gary Brecker or, some other fucking health influencer, I don't know. But, people look at them and be like, oh, somebody did this and they got awesome results, and they try and it doesn't work. Like, we are all so individually different, like, both in experiences, genetics, and just because the carnivore diet worked for someone, or someone's a vegetarian, or doesn't, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater if it doesn't work. It's just everybody's got to find what works for them. And that's, I think, doing hard shit gets you better at doing hard shit. Like, I've failed at way more things than I've succeeded at, but you work out what you're going to succeed at by fucking up 10 things, and you find one that just happens to stick and work. Like, by any financial metrics, like, I'm not a rich man, but we've created a really big ripples that have gone out and done some really cool things. Now, what metric do I choose to call that a success? Like, I don't consider the financial metrics a success, because otherwise, people would look at some of the shows we've done and been absolute failures, but I look at the end result, right? I think everybody's got to do that for themselves. Like, what do you consider success? What's ailing you in life? And, you find what works for you or where you want to go, and you forge your own path in that, whether it's fighting, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's stepping into a boxing gym, whether it's going for a run, I don't know. You do you, boo.
All right, guys, really, really exciting announcement. The Kickback with Jack Pod has its first official sponsor, Hand Raised Apparel. So I'm wearing the black tee right now. It's really great quality, really nice boxy fit. I've also got the white one here. Just really incredible quality. You can wear it to training, you can wear them out to dinner. I grapple in mine all the time, and, it hasn't lost any of its quality. It's absolutely amazing. We also have the grey one here, the grey and the green, and it also comes in the grey and the red. And there's also rashies available for grapplers out there. So if you want to check them out, go to Hand Raised Apparel on Instagram and cop yourself one. And now back to the podcast. And what do you consider success?
I just want to wake up. My idea of success is I wake up every morning and do what I feel like doing. I get to spend some awesome quality time with my wife and my dogs. I get to see my family. And, I'm not stressing out about family finances. And, down the track, me and my wife want to have kids, and maybe one day I'll consider my success to be being the best father I can be, or... there's so many metrics of success. I don't think there's any one metric. I want to be a great husband. I want to be a great fighter. I want to be a great athlete. I want to be a great coach. I want to be a great promoter. I don't know. I just want to have some fun.
And on the promotional point, let's talk a little bit about your upcoming show. The
next great. We're just doing the Matt Gambier show again. More importantly, Jackie, I'm going to put you on the spot. Are you coming down?
Yeah, I need to. I need April, right?
We're in need of a commentator. How do you feel?
Mate, I would love to. We'll pencil it in.
April 12, Mount Gambier Showgrounds. We've got 8 fights lined up so far, and hopefully we're going to add a couple more. So, as the last show happened, like, we had this emerging pro scene out of the regional scene. This card this time, we've got a lot more locals, which I think is going to lead to the success. We've got a lot of people making their pro debuts, which is really exciting. We've got 4 making their pro debuts, and then we've got 2 making their 2 of them having their second pro fights. And so, just by doing that proof of concept and just putting the fight on and putting the money down, I think what we've been able to do is just say, like, hey, we're here, we're serious, and we're serious about supporting regional boxing. So that's really, really exciting. But this card is very different than last card, because last card we had to have a pro-am just to sort of bump our numbers up to have a card, whereas this year we've got a straight pro card. So a lot of emerging talent regionally, and we've got our big heavyweight, Johan Lin versus Kenny Nico, the rugby superstar, for our main event. So I am super excited.
It's going to be good. And who else do you have on the card?
Oh, yours truly, obviously, is the leading question.
That's why everyone's coming.
And then, we've got so the bouts, we've got Kenny Nico versus Johan Lind, right, which is super exciting. Kenny Nico, obviously, we talked about, was rugby player, transition boxing, but Johan Lind, the Olympian, shared the ring with in the amateurs with the likes of Joseph Parker and Anthony Joshua and Zhai Li Zhang and their heavyweight who's who of the world. So that's really, really exciting. And it's current South Australian heavyweight, like a professional champion, so he's coming down. Next, we've got Donald Jones versus Krishna Madalaya. So, sorry, Krishna, if I butchered your surname there. But we've got Donald is coming in, and he's from, well, we say he's local. He's from Hamilton, so about an hour and a half away. But where we live, that's considered local. So he's making his pro debut. He's seven-time Vic champ, and plus a bunch of other accolades over his 80-90 fight amateur career. So that's really, really exciting. We've got Katie Riddle, former Australian champion in the amateurs, having her second pro debut. Also from Hamilton, so we consider her local. We've got Toby and Ivy going pro from our gym personally, so that's really, really exciting. And then, obviously myself, I'm fighting. And then we've got Ethan Curry, who's originally from Caston, which is about 45 minutes away from us, currently training out of Geelong, who's having his second pro fight as well. So, and then their opponents are coming from all over. We've got Trent Wood fighting Ethan Curry, who's from Adelaide, making his pro debut. So it's just, we've got some absolute depth in the card with some real experienced pros, but more importantly, and what excites me as a promoter, is we're going to be that stepping stone for some of these guys coming out of the amateurs into the pros. So, that's what's got me really excited.
And just on that point as well, like, how important is it to promote the talent that's in regional areas? Like, I know apart from the very start of my boxing career, I've only ever boxed out of regional areas, and the talent is just unbelievable. Like, how important is it for you to showcase that?
For sure. I think what's really important to understand with, like, boxing is that boxing's a business, and it's not always a fair business. So for us as regional fighters, right? So as a pro fighter, your record probably will correlate more to how many tickets you sell than how good you are at fighting. If you've got a promoter and you're a good fighter, then they will just keep feeding you fights, and you'll keep winning, and you'll keep selling them tickets, and everybody wins, right? What happens when you come from regional areas, it doesn't matter how good you are at fighting, you end up being the B-side, and you fly in, and so a lot of fights are, particularly in the pros, set up as A and B-side, so A-side is supposed to win the fight, B-side comes in to ostensibly lose. They don't always. A-side is the burden of selling the tickets, B-side doesn't have to sell tickets, they just get paid. Now, that's not all of them, but if we're talking about the up-and-coming scene, that's how it works, right? So I know, don't letting out trade secrets here, but I mean, it's super fucking obvious, right? So, so for us as regional fighters, like, we end up being B-sides all the time. It doesn't matter how well you fight. Like, I would argue that I've got a loss on my record that shouldn't be there. Like, sometimes we come in as B-sides that, you're not supposed to win the fight. It doesn't matter how well you fight. It just doesn't go your way on the home scorecards. Or, you just can't get fights. I've had that plenty. Like, I had with 2023, was it 2023? I had 4 fights fall apart within a week. It's 4 fights, maybe 5, I can't remember. And the one fight I had was my third replacement opponent, because there's people trying to protect their records, and I've got no leverage point. Like, I don't have a promoter working for me that can just offer them more money, because I can't sell that many tickets, because we're fighting 500 Ks away from home. You can't get that padded record that some other people get sometimes. So, it's really, really hard if you come from a regional area, unless you just want to go and just get your head punched in all the time and just go straight to the top and fight. You don't get that nice lead into the pros that everybody else gets. So, what we're trying to do is have a promotion by fighters for fighters, and really specifically looking after the regional guys. So we get to bring them in as the A side, and we get to get them that leg up that everybody else, if they come from from a non-regional area, would get. So, I mean, that's the importance. It's night and day. It's the difference between retiring as a pro 15-0 or retiring as a pro as 5-10 is having promoters that want to work with you and look after your career.
And does that come with some sort of like forming relationships with fighters? Like, you have a card and you have similar fighters on every time you have a card. Like, is that an important thing to form a relationship with the boxers as a promoter?
Oh, 100%. That's why like fighters sign to a promotion, because like if you're going to jump across, like the idea of a promoter is to build a star, right? So we get a fighter, we promote them, build them up every time we put them on. Sometimes you lose money early on, but as you go further on and on, you know they're as they go further on and they get bigger and more money. It's sort of a mutually beneficial arrangement. But for what we're doing, it's not like that. I don't sign fighters up to X amount of fight contracts. Is not really what we're doing, and we're a regional area, so like down the track, and I'm not ruling out doing big city shows down the track, but where we are right at this point in time is to be that stepping stone for them to go up and get paid and looked after and get those big opportunities later on. Now I do foresee a time when we're at that place. So to answer your question, yes, it's important, and that is typically how it works. It's not necessarily how we're structuring what we're doing. We're just really an event by event basis, but just because we're so new, there's not a lot of depth in the pro scene where we are, so we've got to build that out, and down the track, if that builds and gets traction, then 100%. And I hope that well, not even a hope, I already know that the fighters respect what we're doing, because there's fighters that are coming down that are fighting for money that they would fight for a lot more money normally, but everyone loves what we're doing and what we're trying to help out. So how we're trying to help people out, and we're just being fair and transparent with everybody, and we've got some amazing feedback, and people are knocking my inbox in trying to get on the show. So I was a long-winded answer maybe, but yeah, the answer is yes. That is typically how it works, but we're trying to do something a little bit different at this point.
And you touched on it a little bit earlier, but you talked about Cambodia and having a fight over in Cambodia. How important is it to have those international fighters that are willing to come over to Australia and willing to fight these up-and-coming guys?
Yeah, so obviously we fought in Cambodia slightly differently, and we invest in the Cambodian scene, and we're still looking to do that to bring them over, but there's a little bit more work to do before that's a foreseeable outcome. So just something slightly a little bit different there. But the problem with Australia is particularly as a promoter, is having people willing to fight anyone at any point is really, really hard in Australia. Like, we don't have the depth of the boxing scene that the UK or the US has, where you've got, there's no journeyman in Australia that have got 100 losses on their record. There's no fighters with 100 fights on their record. Where you go to the US or UK, and you can just call anyone up at any time, and they just drive around the country and just take fights and get paid well. Which, yeah, obviously, you go, who wants to fight a guy with 40, 50, 60 losses on their record? But that's what makes a show. So many things happen within a show. Like, say you fly an international opponent in, and you've dropped 5, 6, 7 grand just to get them here on visas, medicals, flights, transportation, everything, and then their opponent rolls their ankle a week out from a fight. There's no chance of replacing that in Australia, right? So we've got certain places we can get fighters from, and particularly Indonesia, Thailand, or Southeast Asia generally. A lot of Indian fighters coming in, Fijian, and yeah, granted they don't have a good winning record in here, but they're really, really crucial to actually making the scene go. And yeah, so unfortunately, it's a dirty business sometimes that some fighters' careers are built off the back of. Well, somebody has to lose, right? So that's what we talk about with the A and B side. So there's a big, obviously, there's a big demand for B side fighters, and you don't have the B side fighter depth in Australia that you do have in other countries. Therefore, the fly-in from other countries feels that need, but it's horrendously expensive.
So, there's not much depth in pro in Australia. How important is it to have a decent amateur career in Australia?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say there's not a lot of depth. We actually, like everything in sports, Australia, per capita, just has a ridiculous outcome on a world stage. We've got some phenomenal... There is some awesome depth in Australia, but maybe it's not... the depth per square meter is probably not as high as somewhere like Europe, right? So, but yeah, amateurs serves a really big purpose. Amateurs are... It's like saying amateurs is the local footy to... is what local footy is to the AFL. That's where all the talent comes from. For all its faults, it serves a very, very important purpose in Australia. So, yeah, very important.
Mm-hmm. And like, how many fights would you recommend someone having at amateurs before they can even consider going pro?
It depends on the fighter and depends on what they want to achieve, and depends on when they started fighting and how old they are. You know, like if you want to make a serious run at the pros, like you'd be stupid to do it with under 20, 30 fights at least, and that's pretty low. But then you've got guys like Canelo who went pro at 16. It's not a one size fits all. If you can go pro and you can get the experience up and you've got a promoter that's working with you and you can get 12 fights a year and they're going to feed you chumps and you can build yourself up, like, you know, you can go pro a little bit earlier. But, you know, if you're someone who's, depends on what you want to do, like, if you're someone who doesn't have any realistic good income earning opportunities and you've had a couple of amateur fights and you're not winning them, well, I mean, you can go pro and go on the journeyman circuit and come in as the B-side and get paid really well, and make a suited, like, you know, a half decent career out of doing that sort of stuff as well. Like, you know, as we said before, there's no one size fits all. It just depends on the person. But like, you know, if you started, like, I did my first fight till I was 21. So for me, I had 20 something amateur fights and then went pro, which, you know, if I'd started at 15 and I had 20 before I was 15, before I was 17, 18, I probably would want to have another 20, 30 fights. Like, Duck's going pro and he's had 80, 90 amateur fights. I had 20, you know, is what it is.
And what do you think the approach should be to amateur fighting? Like, do you think anyone can just casually jump in and have an amateur fight, or do you think they need to consider like the ramifications of what they're doing?
No, I think everyone should. I mean, amateurs is just about, like, okay, let me preface this. You should have a coach that lets you know when you're ready to fight. But outside of that, like, you know, records are for DJs. Like, if you're gonna fight, fucking fight. Particularly amateurs, I hate it when people are like, oh, I'm in fight camp, and you're like, you're a fucking amateur. You're not in fight camp. Like, take fights whenever they come. Like, I think I lost my first 2 amateur fights, and then I was getting off of Kentucky. I landed in Adelaide, and they were looking for fights, and I was like, all right, I'll go fight. Like, I've done no training in 2 weeks. I was in New Zealand drinking, and I got my first win. Like, without training for 2 weeks. Like, I think amateurs is all about getting your numbers up. It's all it is. Like, people who really try and curate amateur records are dickheads, in my opinion. You know, the more fights you have, the better you're gonna get. And if you want to, you know, try and get a fucking 10-0 amateur record and try and avoid fights in the amateurs, like, you know. But I think, like, the amateurs are set up better in some ways that, you know, when you get to an elite level and you get up to Australian titles, and that, you don't have a choice. You have to fight people. You can't duck and weave people at big tournaments. So that's one really good aspect of amateurs. But yeah.
Do you wish pros were more like that?
Well, I mean, with the Saudi money rolling in,
yeah,
it's kind of getting that way. Like,
true.
You know, it turns out that some oil billionaires can fix the whole boxing problem.
Mate, I'll fight Usyk tomorrow if you give me 100 million. You know.
Oh, I'd fight Usyk for free just for the fun.
Yeah.
But what people don't understand about boxing is, like, so I'm going to be very vague about dates and whatever, but it was around the 80s that they had the they brought in what they call the Ali Act, which separates the promoter from being the sanctioning body, right? So it was an antitrust lawsuit brought in the US against one of the WBC or WBA to separate them. So if you think the UFC has belts and the UFC also is the promoter of the fights, right? So in boxing, you've got the WC, the WBA, the IBF, the IBO, or whatever, Ring Magazine, right? The sanctioning bodies, and you get your promoters like your Matt Truman. So in the way that boxing works is they're separate, right? So the sanctioning bodies are not the promoters. And that is why boxing's so fragmented, but it's why boxers get paid so much more. Everyone wants to talk about UFC does this, does that, but, like, boxing works under a different, like, obviously there's some collusion between the UFC and paying off politicians and all that to make sure that they don't come under that, because there's no legitimate reason why boxing would fall under the Ali Act and not MMA, right? But the reason why MMA fighters don't get paid the same is they don't have the same bargaining power we have as boxers. We can say no to fights, we can jump across promotions, we can decide what we want is good for our career. Not as good for the consumer, but it's better for the participant, right? So do I wish boxing was like that? I don't know. Like, there's a reason why boxers get paid a lot more. But yeah, and this is one thing that it frustrates me that nobody ever talks about. It's a super, super obvious, and I think the discussion is very it's not talked. Sorry, the discussion is not had for the exact reason that there's a lot of financial interest in making sure the Ali Act does not apply to MMA, and the product that the consumer gets as an MMA consumer is so much better. Like I've been to so many shitty, even like high level. Like you can't even watch fucking pay-per-views on boxing because DAZN can't even work their shit out. I've never got a big pay-per-view on DAZN. Like I
Pay $60 and it crashes every single time.
Every single time.
Yeah.
Whereas like UFC has just got streaming nailed. Like they do it better, but they got a lot more money at stake because it's not going to the fighters, and they don't have to placate these fighters anywhere near as much as boxing does. So I don't know.
So at a local level and a South Australian level, how do you think we can see the boxing scene grow?
Buy tickets. That's all it is. It's like anything. You want to see results, put money into it. You got to have people stupid like me that are willing to put the money up, but we've got to see a return on people wanting to buy tickets. It's that simple.
And obviously, like hosting a show regionally, are there any sort of unique challenges that come with that?
Oh, it's horrendously more expensive, and we can't sell tickets for as much. But the business model's cooked, but that's why you got to have people as stupid as me to do it. Like, people think that doing things in regional areas is cheaper, but we've got to fly everybody in. Like, our travel costs are horrendous. Our accommodation costs are horrendous. But we also get a lot of support from the local community and the fighters and everything else. So, yeah, the regional scene doesn't make as much sense, but I'm betting big on it early on because I think it's going to lead to something magic, and we'll come back and talk in a couple more years, and I think we'll have some more exciting shit to talk about.
And how big is it for a town of 30,000 people to have Olympians and ex-rugby players and pros and decorated amateurs in there? Like how much does that mean for a town like Mount Gambier?
I think it's on the individual. What we found last year was actually really quite hard to there's a lot of people down here, like your average consumer doesn't really understand the difference between pros and amateurs that much. So when we put amateur shows on previously, when we put amateurs on previously, like people were like, I've been to the box and they don't really understand the difference between the two until they go to it. And that's us as a promoter, as us as storytellers, to really educate the consumer. So if you've got your diehard boxing fan, it means so much. Like there's a lot of people in there that that are diehard boxing fans, and it means the world to them to see something like that in their back office. But it's a bit like if I got free tickets to Drake, I wouldn't go. I couldn't even name a song, right? So but if someone jazzes me up about how awesome Drake is and shows me some songs, and maybe I show up to the concert. So.
And have you had any pushback from like the local politicians or local council, or are they pretty supportive of it?
No, we've everyone's been super supportive. Like, there's a lot of SA is the hardest state to get anything done. Like, it's not pushback. The framework that's already in place makes it incredibly difficult, incredibly costly to do anything. So, which is a big reason why there's been no pro scene in SA. There are certain people at the Office of Rec and Sport in South Australia that have made doing this absolutely phenomenal. Like, there are some awesome people involved, even right up to the highest levels, that have been very pro what we're doing. Doesn't mean we haven't had challenges, and there's been some absolutely ridiculous things that have happened with certain bureaucrats that have made doing this stuff incredibly hard. But politically, I mean, if we talk about actual political, like, we don't really have that much involvement. I think things are easier if you don't get politicians involved, but it's the issue, the damage was done whenever the fuck they wrote whatever rules we have to operate within in SA. So, yeah.
I guess sort of just lastly here for you, mate, you got any like words of encouragement for people come down to the show? What date is it on? When does it start? Any sort of key details, really?
Yeah, absolutely. Words of encouragement is please buy tickets. So April 12, Mount Gambier Showgrounds, Mount Gambier. And yeah, come down. We're going to put on an awesome show. I think we do regional shows. Regional shows are better than stadium shows. That I will promise you. And if you don't like it,
I can vouch for that, for sure.
Yeah.
All the best amateur shows I ever fought were country shows, and all the worst were city shows. So
people go off like they. People get very excited. There's a joke I'll put in there that I'll say for after the podcast.
Well, that was everything I had for you, mate. Unless there's anything else you wanted to add or anything you felt I didn't ask you.
No, all for the interested parties. Jack was one of our fighters from Mount Gambier. Came down, worked in Mount Gambier for a few years. Was an absolute pleasure and an absolute awesome guy and a great fighter. So I don't know if that's anything relevant, but I wanted to add that one.
Cool. I'll slip you the $50 after, mate. Appreciate it.